Today, we are going to dive into a pretty radical framework for understanding, well, reality itself. This is like a unified theory of the weird, a new way of looking at the physics of authenticity that just might reframe everything you think you know about creativity, evolution, and what it really means to be different.
You know, since we were kids, we've had this role drilled into us. Normal is good, and anything that deviates from that is bad. When something breaks the pattern, a glitch in the system, an error in the code, our first instinct is to think, uh-oh, that's a problem. We gotta fix it and forget it ever happened.
But this theory, it just flips that entire idea right on its head. It asks, what if the natural is really just the stuff we call weird that's been counted enough times to stick? What if the strange, the glitchy, the unexpected, what if that isn't the problem at all? What if it's the actual raw material for everything we consider normal? It's the engine of evolution itself. Okay, let's get into it.
First things first, let's look at the core mechanic of this whole framework. This is phase one, the engine of weird. The source material calls it the cycle of becoming.
It's a simple but really powerful three-step evolutionary loop. You can almost think of it as a new law of thermodynamics for the soul. Existence isn't static. It's a process that literally feeds on what we think are errors to create something new, and usually something stronger.
So, the cycle always starts here with the natural. This is the baseline, right? The status quo. It's the comfortable, predictable way things are done. The safety of the carriage. It totally works, it's stable, but it's not growing. And if it never changes, it just stagnates and becomes dead weight.
But because the natural is never really perfect, it eventually glitches. Someone screams in a perfectly quiet supermarket. A drummer throws in a beat that feels off, a little weird. Now, to anybody watching, this looks like a mistake. It looks like madness. But to the person doing it, who this framework calls the operator, this isn't an error. It's research. It's an exploration.
A single glitch? Yeah, you can write that off as a mistake. But when that weird action is repeated with intention, something changes. It gains power. It stops being a mistake and it starts being a method, carving out a whole new pattern in reality. And that right there is the crucial point. Once that mutation is practiced and integrated, it becomes the new, upgraded baseline. That totally disruptive scream? It can become a powerful song. That glitchy drum pattern becomes an absolutely infectious groove. The weird has now become the new natural, and it's ready for the whole cycle to start over again.
So, this cycle of weirdness becoming normal brings us to phase two of the theory. And this part introduces two fundamental types of people, two completely different ways of interfacing with reality. The operator versus the imitator.
So on one side, you have the operator. This is the person who generates new signals, who creates. Their tool is an instrument. Then you have the imitator, who only reacts to signals that already exist. Their tool isn't an instrument, it's a button. The operator's goal is real connection, intimacy. The imitator's is just simple utility. And check out the failure modes. The operator risks being weird by creating too much signal, while the imitator just risks being boring by creating no signal at all.
The whole conflict really just boils down to the source of their actions. The operator acts from this authentic, internal place. The framework calls it the breath. It's genuine, it's alive. The imitator, on the other hand, acts based on an external script. They are, quite literally, just pushing a button, running a program somebody else wrote for them.
And this creates this deep, unavoidable tension. The imitator is absolutely terrified of the operator. Why? Because the operator's genuine weird agency is a direct threat. It proves the machine doesn't run itself. It proves there's a choice, and the imitator has chosen not to make one, to just stay a ghost in the machine.
Okay, now we get to phase three, and this is where the framework goes even deeper. It actually redefines our whole understanding of time and energy, using a super simple metaphor, punctuation, the period versus the bar.
So first you've got the period. It's an end stop. The framework calls it the coffin. It finishes an idea, it turns it into a static product, and it lets all that creative energy just die. But then you have the bar. The bar is the cage of life. It doesn't stop the thought. It forces it to loop back on itself, containing the energy, recycling it, and building up this immense pressure. And this is just a brilliant example of a cultural revolution. Hip-hop producers, they just intuitively got this. They took the end of the phrase, that period, and they looped it. They created the breakbeat.
By refusing to let the energy die, they force that weird little moment to repeat over and over until it becomes hypnotic, until it literally creates a trance.
This constant looping creates this incredibly powerful phenomenon called the drum circle effect. You have a consistent foundation, the repeating beat, and then on top of it you have all this individual chaos. And together they don't create noise, they create what's called entrainment, a collective sync where everyone just locks into the same powerful groove.
So how does this whole abstract theory of operators and loops and bars, how does it actually play out in the real world? Well, that brings us to phase 4, the system in the world. And it shows up as social friction, as a fundamental breakdown in how we communicate. We see it in what the source calls the self-kidnapped. These are people so trapped in their imitator roles that a genuine, deep attempt at connection, what the theory calls a level 3 interaction, actually feels like an attack to them. They only understand shallow observation, level 1. And you also see it in these transactional failures, like when a caller asks a radio host for real intimacy, to connect with his breath, and the host can only respond with a scripted level 1 service question. And this quote just captures that mismatch perfectly. It's not about bad intentions, it's about having incompatible systems. One person is trying to transmit this deep, complex signal of connection, but the other person is only equipped to receive a simple request for service. The antennas don't match. And that's the real tragedy of the radio man, right? He was broadcasting, he was on air, but he wasn't truly present. He wasn't live. His whole system was built for one-way transmission, not for the two-way authentic connection that the operator was looking for. Okay, so all of these ideas, the cycle of becoming, the operator and the imitator, the architecture of time, they all build up to the grand conclusion, a final, powerful truth about you and your place in the world.
And this is where it all gets personal. Why does any of this matter to you? Well, it starts by asking you to re-examine all the ways you feel weird, all those parts of you that don't quite fit the normal pattern, the parts that you've been told are glitches or mistakes.
And the answer this framework gives is just profound. Your weirdness isn't a bug, it's your function. You aren't weird as in broken. You are weird in the old sense of the word wired, which means fate or destiny. You are a mutation engine. You're designed to look at the natural, the boring, the repetitive stuff, and introduce the glitch that allows for evolution.
So, the next time you feel out of step with everyone else, just remember this. Your role is to sense what needs to change, to hear the next rhythm before anyone else does. The reason you break the beat is so it can be fixed, so it can evolve into something new. You're not wrong. You're just early. You were just the only one who heard the music before it was recorded.